The first thing when we had landed, I remember walking out of the airplane and just feeling like I had hit like a wall of water. It was so humid. I couldn't believe how humid it was. I was like, wow, okay. And it's that great feeling where you don't have to put on lotion on your hands because it's so humid, you know? But then your hair gets frizzy and then you don't like it as much anymore. But I remember that was probably one of my very first impressions of Peru. I have had the blessing to go to a third world country before with my family, so I feel like the initial third world country shock wasn't as big as a shock for me, because I've spent time with a lot of my family out in Colombia before, and so I've seen what the lifestyle is like, but it was beautiful just to kind of walk back into, I don't know, into Peru, into South America. I think it's beautiful to me because it's half of me is, you know, my Colombian mother. It's the South America culture. I've grown up very biculturally, and so it just made me happy to be there and just to get to understand and to learn and to be a part of more of that side of my family, of that culture. So anyways, I guess those are probably some of the initial thoughts. I do remember probably about my second or third night in the MTC. At first it was super fun, and then it was like an EFY on steroids. That's what it felt like to me, you know, one of those youth programs on steroids. And then it hit me like about the third or fourth night. I just remember laying down in my bed and just looking up at the ceiling and thinking, I'm not going home for a really long time. I'm going to be here for a really long time. And it just kind of hit me that I was just starting a whole new journey. So anyways, those are probably some of my first initial thoughts going to Peru. My mission was 9 miles by 9 miles big, so it's very, very small. They say that it's the smallest mission outside of Temple Square, but I've had other friends tell me that their missions were smaller. I don't know. They like to argue that they're the smallest mission in the world or not. But it's a very small mission. However, it's populated like New York. I mean, it is filled with people. Filled with people. My sectors, or the areas of that my companion and I were in charge of, would only be probably sometimes 10 blocks by like 4 or 5 blocks big. It was very, very small sectors that we would have. However, we'd walk up and down those sectors and you'd meet new people every day because it's just filled with people. So I guess that's a little bit of what Peru is like there. And the other thing is that it's so populated, there's no place to keep building. And so what they do is once they have everything, all the land covered with homes, then they just start building on top of their homes. They build another level, another level, another level, another level, and it's just filled with just tons of homes, and there's more and more people, and just I feel like it just gets bigger and bigger every day. But it's awesome. It's a very, very city-like feel. Obviously in that type of a culture, the culture is very different than what a city like is up here, but it's filled with people. The church is well established there. There's a lot of members out there, which is wonderful. There's a lot of well established wards. A lot of people typically will have heard of or know a Mormon. And so typically if you're not Catholic down there, then you are I have to think of it in English, Jehovah's Witness, or an evangelist, or an Adventist, or a Mormon. And so that's like, or maybe you're an atheist, but those are pretty far and few in between to find sometimes, because there's just such a culturally based belief in God down there, and it's just beautiful. Anyway, so the church is very well established down there. Most people know who the Mormons are. And just most of them just don't know much about it or have ever tried or experienced it. I'm sorry, I don't really know a lot of facts or numbers about the church. I don't know how many people or how many churches. I know that the first stake was in Lima Tambo, and that was really cool because it was inside my mission, so we got to go there, and they talk all the time about it was the first church and the first stake there. I could be wrong. I don't. Nobody fact me, but that's what I was told. And so, but it was wonderful. I loved it. The temple was really close to us. It wasn't in our mission. It was barely outside of our mission. I believe it's Lima East, in La Molina is what it's called. But it's just barely off the boundary. So we had the blessing to actually go to the temple very often throughout our mission. And we had the blessing to take converts to the temple because it was so close to us. It was typically within anywhere between 20 minutes to an hour, or sometimes an hour and a half, depending on traffic, away from us. That's another thing. It's 9 miles big, but it takes 2 hours to get from one end to the other. Yes, because of traffic. Can you imagine that? It's crazy. I don't think I ever went above 45 miles an hour the entire time because there was so much traffic. It's crazy. Anyways, that's a little bit about Lima. There's actually 5 missions inside of Lima alone. Lima, all of Lima is probably, it takes probably about 3 to 5 hours. You can't quote me on it, but it's really huge. I would say it's probably from Salt Lake to Cedar City big. It's really, really big, that city. And so it's kind of different, I guess you could say, the geographics of it. However, I mean, just my mission alone is just the dead center right next to the coast. And so it's just super, super small. So anyways, I think the Latin culture in general has a very loving, embracing type of personality, you know? And they're just always just hugging you, and they just give you the kiss on the cheek, and it's great. It's just so warm and loving. In the area that I was in, specifically in Lima, it's a dangerous area, and so a lot of the homes are barred or gated or with 5 locksmith locks, and it's just very, very kind of people. A lot of people are very closed when it comes to safety, and so typically, I mean, we didn't. To be honest, we didn't knock on a lot of doors because it's hard to even just get past them. They don't even open the front door, you know. And our mission president would suggest us to do in several other ways by contacting and working through members and less actives and stuff, but. It's a very kind of a closed community, I guess you could say. It's different from the Providences that in Peru, where people are outside and they're just talking, and you know, it's a different lifestyle. It's a little bit more of a safer environment, I guess you could say. But inside of Lima, to be honest, I mean, there's a lot of robbing and stealing. I don't want to scare anybody that's going there, but it is the truth. You do have to be careful, and it is kind of closed. However, the moment, I mean, when you knock on the door, they don't even come out their front door. They like come out their window and they're just like, who is it? You know? And it's funny. I thought it was the funniest thing, or I thought it was the weirdest thing when I first was there. I was like, why doesn't anybody open their door? How rude. They just come out of their windows all the time. I don't understand this. And so, but then I understood that it was because a lot of people are afraid, and because there's a lot of things that will happen. So anyways, but the moment that you can gain their trust, if you can just talk to them through the window, or if you can talk to them through having a member there who knows them, or there's so many different ways that you can do it to gain the trust of a Peruvian inside the center city of Lima. But once you've gained that trust, they embrace you. I mean, they just embrace you, and you feel so loved. It's like, I just have a family down there. I really do. I'd love to go back down there, and I know that I would just be received in open arms and taken care of, because the people just love. I mean, their capacity to love is so big. And so really it's just a matter of just getting past the trust wall that is just made there just because of the nature of the city. Once you get past that, the people are absolutely amazing, and they're super, super kind. So anyways, that's a little bit about the people. They're very, very family-oriented. Super family-oriented. And I think there's a lot of families, or a lot of places in the world that are, but I just feel like you go to a house, and this is really normal. I mean, you knock on the bottom door, and it's probably like the mom and dad. And then upstairs is their first kid, and then that's their second kid, and above that's their third kid, and the fourth kid, and all their families. And it's just like, when you move out, you just move upstairs, or you build another layer on top of your house, or you're living right next door, or you're living right behind. That's really, really normal, is that they will stick very close to each other. And that's really neat to see how close they are and how actively involved they are in each other's lives. I feel like it is I don't know, I feel like we're probably used to a very fast-paced lifestyle, and it's a little bit more of a slower paced, and kind of just like breathe in and take in the moment a little. And their lunch is very important to them. And it's different because, this is something very interesting that I had to get used to, is that we'll eat dinner as our main meal. I mean, you come home and you eat together, and that's, kind of the typical family dinner is that. And then you have a big meal. But there it's actually for lunch. And so for breakfast, you'll eat something really small. And then for lunch, a lot of shops will close down, or a lot of people will go home, and you'll have lunch together. And lunch will be from 1 to 3. This isn't just, let's grab a sandwich and a soup or something. You have like a family dinner, but it's family lunch, I guess you could say. And you just eat and you just have a good lunch. Now, obviously, for missionaries, it's different. We get in and out and we go back to work, But it's interesting because a lot of times during 1 and 3, you could find a lot of families at home because that's just it's the lunch hour. And so I think it was a little bit less in that area because it is the middle of the city, and so there's a lot of people who are working, who go out to the middle of the city, and they're working a lot of professional jobs. But that is the culture of Peru, and really the culture of a lot of South America is that lunch is the main meal. And I did find that very often. We would eat big lunches, and then for dinner we'd have like a bread, like a couple pieces of toast, and like some hot chocolate, or just something really simple, some fruit or cereal or something like that. We would just go back to our apartment and just eat something simple. And so, anyways, that was kind of a culture difference that I had to get used to. And in the middle of the day, you're so full, and then you have to go out walking. You're just like, oh my word. But it's great because you burn all the calories after you eat them all. You get home and you barely eat anything, go to bed. It's such a healthy way to like live and eat. It's great. So anyways, that was something kind of different that I hadn't known. So yeah, lots of earthquakes. Not lots, but just small. They're just really small earthquakes. I remember in the MTC just laying down one night, and all of a sudden I felt everything shake, and I was like, Hermana? Just like patting underneath, and I was like, what was that? And she's like, oh, it's nothing. And she didn't even feel it, but I felt it. And they're just really small. I mean, they're super, super subtle. If you're not laying down, then or standing still, you might not feel it. Some of them are a little bit harder than others. I remember being out in the field, and it was a harder, small earthquake, and it doesn't last very long. It's just a couple of seconds. And I just remember the earthquake happening, and my companion, we had like this little patio, and I was inside the room watching her through my window, washing like a dish, and she was outside like grabbing something. I think she was cooking. I don't even remember. But I just remember she was just right outside the door, and this earthquake started to happen, and I freaked out. I was like, we're gonna die! And I saw these ladies like running out of their homes with their kids in their hands, just screaming, just screaming. And I was like, oh my gosh. And they're just like screaming because when there's earthquakes like that, you have to go out to the street because a lot of the homes aren't stable enough and they'll fall. And so the best thing to do is just to go out into the street. And so that's the safety that they teach you. Well, I didn't know that. I thought that you're supposed to go into the doorway like I've been taught here in Utah. So I'm just like grabbing the door for my dear life. And I'm like, Hermana Smithy! And she's laughing her head off because she knows that these earthquakes only last for a few seconds. I mean, 4 or 7 seconds, 10 at the most maybe. It's just a couple seconds long. And she was just laughing because she knew that it wasn't a big deal at all. And I was just like terrified. And she's like, this is normal. This is going to happen a lot during the mission, so don't worry about it. And so anyways, it's just like little shakes. It's like if you're like in a waterbed and somebody just slaps it and it's just a little shake. It's not a big deal at all, but it scared me at first. So anyways.
Peruvian food. What can you tell me?
Peruvian food is the best. It's amazing. It is so good. Sometimes there's a few places that are better than Colombian food, and don't tell my mom that. But there are some amazing foods there, and there's amazing food in Colombia too that I've grown up with. But there's let's see, I guess I could state a couple of my favorites. There's Lomo Saltado, which is like it's French fries with I almost want to say it's like fajitas without the whatchamacallit, the tortilla. But they put French fries with Lomo Saltado, which is that like the fajita and the onions and peppers and whatever, and then you eat a lot of ají there, which is a spicy little sauce that they use. It's funny because before my mission, I hated spicy food. I couldn't eat anything spicy. But then during my mission, they feed you ají with everything, and they don't force you to eat it, but I would just dare myself little by little to just keep trying it because they would say it was so good, and they put it on everything. And so, anyways, now I've come home, and I love spicy foods. I go to Taco Time, and I ask for the hottest, and it's great. It just feels like such a great accomplishment that I can eat spicy food now, thanks to Peru. But Peruvian food is super good. It's very seasoned. It's very, very seasoned. The funny thing, the joke down there is that all their plates are made out of chicken, potato, and rice. And it kind of is, actually, like most of their plates is chicken, potato, and rice. If it's mashed potatoes or French fries, or if it's just sliced potatoes, or if it's diced potatoes, or if the chicken is baked, or if it's cooked, or if it's fried, or if it's whatever it is. They have so many different plates, but it's funny because most of it really is just chicken, potatoes, and rice. So anyways, it's great. It's awesome. The food is great. Do you know what? I did feel like it was very different. Just in a, not very different, but just a little bit different because, well, there's just different ways of speaking Spanish, I guess. I guess just like people in the United States, they speak different on the west side versus like, down south, like southern United States, like Alabama or Georgia. We hear them differently. We're like, whoa, they speak differently. And I guess it's kind of similar out there. Colombia and Peru is different. And they there was a lot of slang that I didn't know. And so I just remember some of my companions would be excited because I already spoke Spanish, but they would just say a whole paragraph and I would just be sitting there thinking, is this Spanish? This is Spanish, right? Because there's a whole bunch of words I didn't get there, and there's just a lot of slang there. And I guess part of it too is that my mom, she grew up in a very formal home, and so she obviously knew a lot of slang, but she didn't teach a lot of slang to us because she speaks a little bit more of a formal Spanish, and so I grew up more in that mindset, I guess, and so I don't know a lot of slang, not even a lot of Colombian slang. And Peru, there was just a ton of slang that I didn't know, and they would just use it as normal words all the time. So I guess that was one thing that I felt like was different, and the accent is really different from a Colombian accent. So I felt like some of the words are chopped off a little quicker than what I was used to, and so I don't know, there was little things like that. I remember the first little bit, it was a little bit hard for me, even though I wasn't perfect at Spanish, but I felt like I could carry on a conversation just fine with my family before I had left, and so it wasn't thanks to my dear persevering, determined mom of teaching us Spanish and us not wanting to learn Spanish, but she was really good at helping us. Thanks to her, I was able to go into the mission and have a little bit of a head start. But I felt like there was still a lot that I had to learn, just learning the Peruvian Spanish and their slang and the way that they talk, so that way you could understand them and also speak the way they speak. Because I feel like that's a way that they feel loved and accepted by you, is when you speak is similar to how they speak. Obviously, you don't have to say all the slang words and stuff, but just speaking how they speak is, I feel like it's a way of showing that you're embracing the culture and that you love them and you want to portray that love and that you love who they are. And so, anyways, that was part of it. This one's kind of fun. This is another family. So the last family was Familia Fortunique, and this one is Familia Guerra is their name. And they were just great. And she was this girl from the selva, which is the jungle area. And so she just had the most fun accent to listen to, because they speak differently there. And her way of talking and her personality was so fun. And both of them were just from this area, and they were so fun to be around. They struggled financially very, 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 very much. They struggled a lot. And I remember there was times that we would knock at the door of the home and all the lights and the water was shut off. And so we were teaching with candlelights. We were teaching lessons with candlelights. And we were just thinking, there's got to be ways that we can help this family and do more. But not only just like helping them financially, but helping them help themselves. Helping them to have a skill or a way where they can not only just receive help temporarily, but gain a skill where they can continue helping themselves. So we did something called a pollada, which is like a big, you sell chicken basically. So let me tell you the process. So what you do is the end process is that you make these little plates of food and you just sell it, and it's just a big, huge thing. It's like putting up a lemonade stand, but on steroids, because it's like chicken and potatoes and rice or salad and a drink or whatever. And it's a big thing, and people do it all the time for fundraising down there, and you can make a lot of good money if you cook well and if you sell well. So anyways, so we were just like, all right, we're going to throw on a pollada. Like, we're going to do this. And she's like, what? We're going to throw a pollada? Where are we going to get the chickens? I've never done this before. We can't do this. Like, yes, hermana. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. We can do this. And so we got we just got a lot of some other missionaries together that were close in that zone. because we're really close to each other. A lot of missionaries are super close because it's a tiny mission. So sometimes you see other missionaries just walking down borders of your sector. You see missionaries all the time. So anyways, so we kind of got together with other missionaries, and we had to go out and buy these chickens. And I mean, like, chickens that are just like hooked. And they're just taking them off, and they're just chopping off their head, and you're like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a chicken like this. And you're pulling out the extra feathers, and you're cutting it open and cleaning it, and I was like, wow, this is a great experience for me to have. It's like kind of gross, but it's just a good experience to have. And so we got all these chickens, we got it all put together, and then we were just calling up people in the ward, and we handed part of the ward list to her, and we said, okay, call these people, and we're gonna help you call too, and ask them if they want a pollada on Saturday at 2 p.m. and we'll deliver it to their home. And it was neat because the bishop got involved, and he got the young men involved, and the young men showed up at the door, about 4 or 5 of them with bikes, and they were out there to deliver the polladas, and it was just great. And then the Elders Quorum president was there, and the Relief Society president was there, and it was just wonderful to throw on a pollada, and we were all there together cooking and trying to get it done, just like, a little systematic system of putting all the sauces in and putting in like just cleaning out all the chickens and frying them and getting the rice done and getting everything done and putting them in the packaging and making sure it's still hot by the time it gets to the house. And it was just super, super fun. And then making sure that we get the money back. And I remember specifically after all this was done, we sat down on the table. I mean, we were just exhausted from the day. It was just an all-day event, Saturday service project that we had done with a ton of help from the ward, which was just, we were so grateful for. And most of the ward members had bought the food, and a lot of our neighbors, and it was just great. And we had sat down, and we were talking about tithing. And her husband was having a really hard time with tithing, and she was having a little bit of a hard time with it. And as we pulled out the money, and we started counting the money, she just bursted into tears. We had sold a lot of polladas, and there was a lot that she was able to have raised out of this pollada, and she burst into tears because there was not only enough to pay for the bills of the water bill, but not only for that month, but for the next month, and for the light bill, and for the baby food because she was pregnant and she had 4 kids. And I remember specifically before we even split up all the money, we said, okay, this is how much you have. And she was just crying. She's like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe this happened to me. And we said, this is what God did for you. He did this for you. And look at the blessing. Look at how many people love you. I mean, look at how many people were involved today to help you to be able to receive this blessing. And Heavenly Father is the one who put all those people into your life, just specifically at this moment. And she wasn't even a member at this point. She was just somebody who was just learning about the church. And there was just so much love. And we said, the way then we just split up the 10% for tithing. And we said, this is to give back to Heavenly Father and to say thank you to Him. And she just looked at us in tears, and she's like, you guys are right. This is right. No wonder why Jesus talked about this in the Bible. God's the one who gives us everything that we have. And so why can't we give back a little bit in gratitude? And it was such a beautiful moment for her eyes to light up and for her just to gain her own testimony that's why that's a principle that's been around for a really long time. It's not something new. It's not something that the church is just starting. It's something that has been here since the time that Jesus was here teaching. And it was neat to see how even after we had set aside the tithing, there was still enough to pay for all the bills, not only for that month, but for the next month. And there was excess money for her to buy a little bit of extra food, which they were eating bread and bananas for dinner. And it was just such a touching experience for us. And I just think, how grateful that I was that just to kind of sit and watch. It's just that feeling when you know that you're not really doing anything. You're just kind of being you're just watching God just work miracles in front of you and just work these miracles. And it was amazing to see how so many people came together and was able to provide that for her. And not only was she able to receive monetary funds, but it was through her own work, and it was a skill that she gained. And now she knew how to throw on another pollada, no matter if we were in the area or not, to help throw it on. She knew how to do it now. And it wasn't just like, okay, here it is. It was more like, okay, let's do this together. And she was able to gain that skill. And she was able to gain a testimony about when God blesses you, how we can give back. And it was just wonderful. It was a really neat experience. And that family did end up, about a month later, they got baptized. And it was just a neat, just beautiful, and to watch them enter into the temple, and it was just beautiful. It was just, I can't express the joy. There's just so much joy that comes from it, and it's just amazing. It's so amazing to watch it happen, because you're really not doing anything. You just watching. You're just literally on the front seat of watching God's miracle happen in other people's lives, and it's just beautiful. Towards the end of our mission president was saying that he wanted us to start contacting more. I mean, we were in sectors where you've passed by so many people one day, you better be talking to them, you know? And sometimes you just get nervous and you don't want to talk to random people on the streets, but you can totally do it. And so it's just a matter of just smiling and saying hi and just starting up a conversation, you know? And I remember one time, my companion and I, her name is Amos, I was going to call her by her first name. I love this girl. She's awesome. And we were together, and it was my very last companion, my very last area towards the last weeks of my mission. And we were passing the street, and there was this man just standing at a door, which is unusual. People don't normally just stand by their doors just hanging out there. Normally they're locked behind 5 locks, you know? And so we had the impression, we walked past him, we had the impression to turn around and to talk to him. And so we turned around and we just came up to him and we just like gave him a card and we told him a little bit. And he turned to us and he said, "Are you guys the kind of people that help people with their problems?" And I look at my companion and we're like, "Yeah, we help people with their problems through the gospel. Yeah, we're here to help you. I mean, what do you need, you know?" And he looks at us and he says, "Well, I hope you have time to come back around because this person needs a lot of help with a lot of problems." And we were just like, "Well, we're right here. I mean, tell us." So as we get to know this man, he was drinking 10 liters of alcohol a day. And he had lost his job. His wife and children had left him. He was living in a home with his brother who hated him, who didn't talk to him. And he didn't have any monetary funds to keep buying his alcohol, so he was selling furniture, selling clothing, selling anything he could to feed the addiction. And unfortunately, this addiction, he had it since he was very, very young. I mean, just since he was a kid. Like 9 years old, and then he really was consistent about it when he was like 15 or something like that. So for years and years, this is probably a 40, 50-year-old man, he had this addiction. And we began to talk about the atonement of Jesus Christ, or the sacrifice that he had done for us in order to have hope of a brighter future, that he has descended below all of our pains, and he understands us. I mean, that's the reason why he did it, so that he could put his arm around us and say, "Hey, I understand you right now. Turn to me. I'm here. Turn to me. I'm here for you." And so we talked about that, and we invited him to go to the church with us the next day to have a lesson there with a couple other members there present with us. And he just started crying. And we're watching this grown man just like bawling, and we're just like, "Is this something we said, or what did we do?" And he said, "I can't believe that I can walk into God's church." And I was just thrown back by the statement. And he's just like, "Am I really worthy just to step in?" And we were just like, "Yes, of course." The church it's not a museum for perfect people. And all of us are imperfect. Rather, it's a hospital for the imperfect people. That's why we're there. Nobody's perfect there. We're all learning and we make mistakes. And that's the reason why we're there. That's the reason why we take the sacrament. That's the reason why we're learning. That's the reason why we're there to try to help each other. And so anyways, I remember the next day when he had gone to the church, and we talked a little bit about, helping him with his addiction. And there's a 12-step program that the church has to help people who are going through strong addictions like that. It's called this 12-step addiction recovery program. And that's something that you can find like on LDS.org, and they had that down there to be like that program accessible, because you can go to meetings, private meetings with other people who are suffering with similar addictions, and they can help counsel them. And it's just a free service that the church offers. And it's all based around the atonement of Jesus Christ and how Jesus Christ can help us overcome those addictions. Anyways, as we started doing this, I remember him just, we invited him to say the last prayer, and he kneels down to pray, and I don't know if I have ever in my life heard such a heartfelt prayer. I mean, he was just pleading to God to please give him a second chance at life. And he was just pleading to God to help him get out of this horrible terror that he felt like he was living in. I mean, he had tried to commit suicide 2 or 3 times, and he was unsuccessful. And he said, for a reason I've been unsuccessful, and for a reason you want me here. And please just help my mind, help my heart to be open, so I can learn, so I can receive, so I can change. And anyway, so the story goes on as he just keeps learning and progressing throughout the weeks. And something that was neat is that after our very first initial contact, that second lesson, he came to the lesson just shaking. We were just shaking. And we were just like, what's wrong? And he's just like, I haven't had alcohol since the moment that we met yesterday. And we hadn't even talked about stopping drinking. We hadn't even mentioned a word about it. But he knew that's what he wanted to do. And he knew that's what was destroying his family. And so he knew that he wanted to change that. So he was entering with a desire to change already. And I think that's what helped him progress, because he had such a great desire to change himself, And so he was just shaking. And from that point all the way up until the moment he got baptized, he didn't drink at all. And that was just such a miracle for us to see, because he'd had this addiction for, I don't even know, 30 plus years. And there's no way, that was not us. There's no way that two girls from Utah could have helped him overcome that addiction at all. That is definitely God's miracle working inside this man and helping him have the strength not to drink. And it was a really neat experience for me, a little personally, is that my family had the chance to come down, and I'd worked things out with our bishop and the bishop up there, and my little brother got to baptize him for his baptism. And it was just so neat to, just to share that with my family, and then to also see how his kids, his wife wasn't there, but his kids came to his baptism. And they turned to him, and I just remember watching them talk to him and saying, Dad, you've made a big change. And it was just so neat, and just the joy on his face, his face just lit up. I mean, I just remember when he came out of the water and he was done with his baptism, and he was just lit up. He was so happy, and it's just his eyes, and his family was piecing back together, and his life was piecing back together, and he had found a job before he had gotten baptized. There was just doors that had opened, and it was just amazing how his life was just coming back together. And it wasn't because of anything except for that when we truly have a desire to change and we truly choose to accept Jesus Christ and his gospel into our lives, that's the reason why it's there. It's to make us happy, even if we're going through terrible times. It helps us to have hope and to overcome them and to keep progressing. That's the point, is for us to keep progressing. So anyways, it was just a really, really neat experience. Well, here, let me talk a little bit about families. It's inside of Peru, at least in the spot where I was in our mission, in the areas that we're in there, our mission has a lot of problems with finding families who are married or that are even together. To find a mom and a dad and kids inside the same roof was really difficult to find. And it was really unfortunate because there was a lot of drinking and obviously I can't stereotype or anything, but what we saw often was a lot of men drinking in the streets, and so then the women don't feel loved, and so either one of them have an affair and the families are just torn apart. And I just saw this over and over again. I mean, I felt like I was told the same story over and over again. And it was so sad to see that, that families there's a lot of split families. Or you walk into a home and she's got 3 kids and the 3 kids are from different dads. And it was just like, there's a lot of people who have situations where they're just thrown in situations like that, and that just happens, and then there's other situations that are that way because of choices. But regardless of either one, it was hard to find like one family all together, and it was hard to listen through so many experiences and so much sorrow from families who were torn apart. So anyways, I felt like that was one thing that was kind of sad for me, and to see that in the mission. And it made me feel so grateful that inside the church we strongly have a belief of eternal families, and that we strongly have the belief of that, you know, really we sometimes, I mean, I know that there's hard situations, and sometimes it's not completely doable, but if it's doable and if it's within our power, to try to keep the marriage together as much as we possibly can, you know, but there's definitely a lot of exceptions to that. But I just was so grateful that we have the temple that can provide a place where people can have new beginnings and go into the temple and have a family that's still together forever. And it was neat to see how some families, literally the mom and dad would come back together, and the thought and the idea of them being able to be together forever and not just till death do us apart was just so exciting to them. And to me, it's been something kind of second nature growing up. And to see that, it just made me value so much what it means to have an eternal family, and how God loves us so much that he places us inside families, or it surrounds us with people that we love, that he gives us the chance that we can be with them forever. And that's just beautiful to me to think about it that way. And maybe we haven't been placed in a perfect family situation, but we have the chance to make our own decisions and to hopefully create our own eternal family. And I just think that's beautiful too. And so anyway, so going on to one family in particular that came to my mind, they are a wonderful family. It was a man and a woman, and they were just living together, and they were just great. And they had 2 kids. And they were just so kind to each other. I mean, I don't know, they were just kind to each other, but sometimes they would bicker, and it was just like a great, you know, they already acted like they were married, you know. And so, but they just, when we would talk to them about families being together forever, it was hard for them to think about actually committing to being married and then preparing to be married for forever and to have that joy for forever. But it was just so neat to watch the process go forward. And the father, I mean, one struggle that they had in the home was smoking. And the father would smoke a lot, and she would smoke a little bit, but she would always just tell him, you need to stop smoking, and da-da-da-da. And he's like, I can't. I've had this for a really long time. And it was neat to watch him. In the beginning, he was kind of skeptical, and he didn't really want to be too involved. But as he watched his wife and how involved she was and how she was really trying to change, and he began to be interested, and just watching how much effort he put into to stop smoking was just amazing. And all of a sudden, just to watch how their love grew in between each other, and then to get to the point to be able to watch them get married, which is really hard to get married in Peru sometimes because it's really expensive. And it's just super expensive to get married down there. And so sometimes you have to try to find massive free weddings is what they call it, or different things like that. But anyways, just to watch them work so hard, emotionally, physically, financially, and spiritually to get to that point. And then to watch them get baptized and to go into the temple and watch them do, you know, just to go into the temple and just feel the joy in there. And now they're preparing to go back to the temple soon to get sealed into the temple. And so anyways, I mean, sealed together for forever. So I think that's probably one of my, I just love watching how literally the gospel can bring us together, and it does give us a lot of hope for families. No matter what situation we're in, or no matter what has happened, there's always hope that we can hold on to. And I just think that's beautiful. One big lesson that I learned from my mission was the moment when I had received that confirmation that I had made the right decision of going on a mission. And that was about 3 months into my mission. And it was a point in my mission where I was just struggling a little bit. The area was hard. My companion was hard. I just felt like it was just a hard time. And I felt like I was just falling apart as a young little missionary. And I just remember thinking about Peter and reading that story in the Bible about when Jesus turns to Peter and the other disciples and tells them to come follow him, and how they drop their nets immediately and they follow Jesus Christ. And I just thought about how it says literally the word immediately, that he drops it immediately. And I can't imagine how successful Peter was. I mean, apostles have talked about this. I mean, who knows what kind of a life he was already living. But yet, with so much faith, he was able just to drop everything and follow Christ. And I felt like I was just like coming to understand Peter at this much more of a level, because I can't compare myself at all to him. But just that experience of just temporarily dropping something behind and going to do something that I felt like was better. And I don't feel like that's something that every girl has to do at all. I think that there's different ways that we all can drop our nets, I guess you could say, and follow Christ. And I don't think it doesn't mean serving a mission. I think there's so many ways that you can do it. I think even if it's just following a prompting of letting something go when you don't want to, for something that you're not sure if is going to be better, but you have faith in God that it's going to be better, and you choose to do it anyways. I feel like there's so many different ways that we can do that in our lives, and that for me, serving a mission was my way of having a little bit of that, of an experience and learning from that. And I felt like, when we do go through an experience like that, whether it's a mission, whether it's choosing to go to a different college, or choosing to date another person, or choosing to make a big decision in your family, or whatever it is, I feel like when you go through an experience like that, it just makes you come so much closer to Christ, because you're just dropping everything and you're just walking in the dark in faith, And I felt like that was a huge experience for me to learn that he will carry us, and it's going to be okay. And even if we feel really unsure about it, following that prompting and just having faith to do it, I felt like really changed a lot of the way that I viewed my life and viewed the way that I wanted to make decisions in the future. So I think that was a really big lesson that I learned. I didn't eat it, but they have like this bug, and all the missionaries would dare each other to eat it. It's called sooty. I think that's what it's called. It's this bug, and you eat it live. It's disgusting. But I never ate it, so I guess it wasn't crazy. I guess the first one that came to mind that was really neat opportunity for me to see was my first week of being inside the mission. My companion and her previous companion had already been teaching someone, and he was just not wanting to get baptized, but he knew it was true. He was just afraid of kind of the unknown, what was going to happen next, and would he be able to, he felt afraid that he wouldn't be able to, keep up with what he felt like he needed to do. But after prayer, he made the decision to get baptized, and he got baptized, and that was my first Saturday of my mission out in the field. And it was so neat to watch how the Lord just embraced him, and not only that, but he continued spiritually and personally. He worked so hard to continue to progress spiritually and to get closer and closer to God. And it was neat because he had fallen in love with one of the members there. I think it was like the ward mission leader's daughter or something like that. And then we were able to be invited to when he got endowed, and then to their wedding, to their sealing in the temple. And that was just, it was just an incredible experience for me. And it was towards the end of my mission, because now it's a year later from that date. And to walk into the temple and to watch him and his wife get sealed in the temple was just an ultimate experience. I think most of the highlights of my mission was the moments that I got to see people who got baptized, or people who came back to the church, enter into the temple, and to see them in white, and to see them, just the joy that just enters into their eyes, and the joy that just enters into expression on their face when they recognize how much God loves them and just how you feel when you walk into the temple. So anyways, that's one big highlight of my mission. So I'm a really spontaneous person. I kind of like the thrill of just having a schedule that's just, okay, now I'm going to do this, and now I'm going to spend all day doing that, and now I'm going to do this. And probably one of the hardest things for me was that in the mission, you do the same thing every single day. And I was like, oh my word. I remember 2 weeks into it, I was like, I don't know if I can handle this consistency. I just want something crazy to happen. I just want to do something different, you know? And I thought it was just, I just thought for me, it was a little hard because I'm just like this really spontaneous person. And I don't know, I just like to have spontaneous schedules. And so I think something that I learned was a big lesson about consistency and the great goodness that comes from being consistent. I actually learned that, you know, when you study something every single day, we were required to do a couple hours of studies in the morning. And if I was wanting to study a certain topic, if I didn't try to just read it all out and learn everything I can in 4 hours in one day, but rather split it up in with the X amount of time each day and learn little by little on it, there's just a power of being consistent. And I felt that way throughout most of my mission, being consistent in helping people, being consistent in making goals, being consistent in your study, being consistent in the way that you listen to your companion, or trying to be consistent in following rules or whatever it is. I felt like that was a big lesson or skill that I was in greatly need of learning, and I'm still not perfect at it. I'm still pretty spontaneous, but I feel like consistency is a great skill to have, and that's definitely a skill that the mission gave me and taught me, or at least gave me at least this much. I had no idea what cold humidity was like, and maybe because I'm just from dead center Utah and it's really dry here, but when it's humid and it's cold, even though, I mean, when I looked up the weather, it said that it was only going to be, their winters are maybe 60, maybe 50s at the very coldest in Fahrenheit, and then their hottest is 80s or 90s, and I thought, wow, this is perfect weather. This is not going to be too cold or too hot, and so I planned for that. But when it gets 50 or 60 degrees and it's 100% humidity, because it is literally 100% humidity, it is cold. It is very cold. It's like you feel like you're just swimming in cold water, like in a cold swimming pool all day. It's the weirdest feeling. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe other sisters or brothers know what that feels like because they're from humid places, but I am not. And so I didn't understand that. And so I found that I actually wore like Under Armour underneath my jackets or underneath my blouses, and I'd actually wear like big thick panty leggings, not leggings, but just like that they cover your feet too. So I guess like they're like nylons, but they're really thick. They're basically like pants, you know. And I'd wear that underneath my skirts, because if you have something that's tight on your skin, then it helps it. Because if you just have a big coat over it, like Utah, you just don't warm up. I don't know how to express the feeling. It's really weird. But if you have something that's tight on your skin and then you have a couple layers on, then that keeps you really warm. Also, to bring blankets, because I didn't bring enough blankets, because most of the places where you'll be living in, it is third world rooms or third world living, and so you don't have air conditioning or heaters anywhere except for like the temple. And so that's like the only place that you get to have that luxury. So in the night times it gets really cold and you can't leave the heater running all night because it's really dangerous, the little space heater. It's just dangerous to keep it on all night. And so anyways, I just suggest to bring, don't be tricked by the numbers of 60 to 80. Bring good clothing for cold weather. And then during the summer it does get really hot. And so if you just have a t-shirt, or not a t-shirt, but like a nice blouse that you can wear and you don't have to wear an undershirt with it or something like that, you can just have that blouse on. I'd highly suggest that, because the less layers the better, because it just gets really, really hot. And to have have some skirts that are long and some of them that are just like at the cover your knee length, how the mission suggests it, because it gets hot. It's pretty hot during the summer. So, but it's great. It's totally worth it. So they want me to give you a pep talk if you're going to the same mission that I went to. So let me just tell you, first of all, make sure you bring spray for cockroaches and spiders, because you're going to see a lot of them. Or just don't be afraid of them. And make sure that you just like You just bring things that you love reminds you of what you love and the reason why you're there. But I guess on a more serious note, I think it's just really important. I think before the mission, there's a ton of things that people will tell you, of things of way that you can prepare, or things that you should be doing, or books that you should be reading, or tactics that you should be using, or classes you should be taking, and it's overwhelming. But I think most of all, just make a decision between you and the Lord, what you feel you need to do to prepare for the mission, and what is that He wants you to do before you leave on your mission. And make sure you follow those promptings and that you do them before you go. And then no matter how much you've prepared, when you enter into your mission or into the MTC and into the field, that no matter how much you may have learned, just keep your heart wide open to learning. That's something I learned the hard way. I didn't think I had much to learn when I started my mission. I thought that I was like super ready and I was ready just to take on the world, and I was totally wrong. I had so much to learn. There was so much I didn't know, and there was so much that I learned from my companions. And I think had I had gone into my mission with that mindset that, okay, I want to just learn and soak in as much as I can from the experiences that I'm about to have, I think I probably could have embraced and taken advantage a little more of that in the beginning. So I would just definitely say, determine between you and the Lord what you need to do beforehand. Prepare as much as you feel is right. And then when you go in, just go in with an open heart and be willing to learn, and just never forget the reason why you're there. No matter how hard or how easy or what experiences you go through in the mission. Write down, maybe. I would probably, if it was a personal note between me and you, I think it'd be just to write down your reasonings of why you're going, and hold on to that. So that way you can keep opening that when you come home. Or when you're throughout your mission, throughout hard times or easy times. So I think that would just be my pep talk between you and me.